The moment my father slammed his fist against the kitchen counter hard enough to shake the plates, I realized I wasn't actually a son in that house. I was infrastructure, electricity, Wi-Fi, a paycheck. Something useful people only noticed when it stopped working. And honestly, that realization hurt more than the yelling ever did. I'm Lucas, 27 years old, remote IT support specialist from Ohio. And for most of my life, my family treated me like an emergency fund they could emotionally manipulate. The worst part is that I didn't even notice it happening at first. Because when you grow up inside dysfunction, you don't call it abuse. You call it normal. Growing up, our house revolved around my father's moods. If Dad was angry, everyone walked quietly. If Dad was stressed, everyone became responsible for fixing it. If Dad wanted something, somehow the entire household rearranged itself to make sure he got it. My older brother Tyler learned early that charm worked better than responsibility. He was 31 years old and still acted like life was something happening to him instead of something he participated in. Every few months he'd discover some new career path. Crypto trading, sports betting, dropshipping. A podcast nobody listened to. Every failure somehow became someone else's responsibility, usually mine. Then there was my younger sister Ella. Ella mastered helplessness the way professional athletes master a sport. She couldn't understand bills, couldn't clean correctly, couldn't keep a job because managers were toxic. But somehow she always managed to afford concert tickets, expensive makeup, and weekend trips with friends. Meanwhile, I worked, constantly. I taught myself coding and repair after high school because college wasn't financially possible for me, not because we were poor. Because every dollar in our house somehow disappeared into my father's decisions. By 23, I landed a stable remote tech support job. That should have been the beginning of my independence. Instead, it became the beginning of my exploitation. "You make good money now," my mom said after my first paycheck. That sentence quietly became the foundation of my entire existence. I paid rent, $600 a month, then Wi-Fi, then utilities, then groceries because you work from home anyway. Eventually, I was funding almost half the house while Tyler contributed excuses and Ella contributed absolutely nothing. And somehow, I was still treated like the selfish one. The thing people don't understand about emotionally manipulative families is that they normalize imbalance slowly. One sacrifice at a time. One guilt trip at a time. One family helps family speech at a time. Until one day you wake up realizing your entire identity revolves around keeping everyone else comfortable. That was my life. And honestly, I probably would have stayed trapped in it longer if it weren't for something incredibly stupid. A sandwich. That's what finally broke me. I'd spent 14 straight hours dealing with a cybersecurity emergency at work. The kind of day where your eyes burn from staring at screens and your brain feels like wet cement. On the drive home, I stopped at a deli near my office and bought myself a turkey sandwich. Nothing special, but I'd been craving it literally all day. I remember placing it carefully in the fridge before taking a shower. 20 minutes later, I came downstairs. Gone. The wrapper sat crumpled in the trash. Tyler was sprawled across the couch watching basketball like a teenager instead of a grown man. "You ate my sandwich." He barely looked at me. "Yeah." Something inside me tightened. "You knew it was mine." He shrugged. "Buy another one?" Normally, I would have swallowed it. That's what I always did. Swallowed frustration. Swallowed disrespect. Swallowed anger. But exhaustion strips away your ability to pretend things are okay. "Can you stop taking my stuff?" The room went silent instantly. Tyler slowly turned toward me. "What? My groceries, my food, stop taking it." And then my father looked up from his recliner. The energy in the room changed immediately. Cold, dangerous. Tyler laughed. "Bro, it's literally a sandwich." "That's not the point." My father stood up slowly. "You seriously whining about food right now?" I tried, keeping my voice calm. "I'm asking for basic respect." Then he slammed his fist against the counter so hard the silverware rattled. "You live under my roof," he barked. "You don't get to act superior because you stare at a laptop all day." My stomach dropped. Nobody moved. Nobody defended me, not my mother, not Ella, nobody. My father pointed directly at me. "You think paying a few bills makes you special?" A few bills. I was paying almost half the household expenses. But somehow I was still the ungrateful one. Then he said the sentence that permanently changed something inside me. "If you don't like this family," he said coldly, "then leave." And everybody stayed silent. That silence told me more than the yelling ever could. Because nobody there saw me as someone worth protecting. They saw me as useful. That night I locked myself in my bedroom, opened my laptop, and started looking at apartment listings. Not emotionally, not dramatically, methodically, like a man planning an escape, because deep down I already knew this family would never change. After the sandwich fight, the house stopped feeling like home. It became a place I survived. Every interaction suddenly looked different once the illusion cracked. I started noticing how Tyler only spoke to me when he needed something. How my mother became unusually sweet near bill due dates. How my father acted personally offended any time I mentioned boundaries. The manipulation became impossible to ignore once I saw it clearly. And the craziest part? They genuinely believed I was the selfish one. A week after the argument, I bought a mini fridge for my bedroom. I was tired of my groceries disappearing, tired of pretending it didn't bother me. Tyler noticed immediately. He started laughing the second he saw me carrying it upstairs. "No way," he said. "You're hiding food now?" "Yes, that's actually pathetic." I kept walking. He followed me upstairs. "Bro, it's food. Why are you acting traumatized?" I looked at him for a long moment. Because that's the thing about toxic people. They mock the damage they caused because acknowledging it would force them to confront themselves. "You've stolen from me for years." He rolled his eyes instantly. "There you go being dramatic again." Dramatic. That word practically raised itself in our house. If you were hurt, you were dramatic. If you were angry, you were sensitive. If you wanted boundaries, you were selfish. Anything that threatened the family system became a personality flaw. My father got colder after that, not openly aggressive. Worse, quietly hostile. He'd make comments while walking past me. "Money changes people. Some people forget family comes first. You'd think we were roommates the way he acts now." Every sentence designed to make me feel guilty for slowly pulling away, but the guilt wasn't working anymore. That scared them, and honestly, it scared me too. Because once you stop feeling guilty, you start realizing how much control guilt gave people over your life. I started protecting myself quietly. New bank account, new passwords, new email recovery systems. I rented a PO box near work so sensitive mail wouldn't arrive at the house anymore. Thank God I did. Because one morning I walked downstairs and caught my mother opening one of my letters. She jumped when she saw me. "Oh, I thought it was your father's." My name was printed clearly across the envelope. I stared at her. "Why are you opening my mail?" She immediately became defensive. "Don't speak to me like I'm a criminal. You opened my mail. I was checking something." "What?" She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. They were trying to figure out how much money I made. I took the envelope from her hand and walked upstairs without another word. My hands shook so badly I could barely unlock my bedroom door. Because suddenly, all the weird comments over the years started making sense. Dad constantly asking if I'd gotten raises, Tyler joking about me being rich, Mom asking invasive questions about bonuses. They weren't curious. They were calculating. That realization made me physically sick. Later that week, I overheard Tyler talking to my father in the garage. "Lucas definitely has more money than he says." "You think? He barely spends anything anymore," my father sighed. "He owes this family." Owes. That word echoed in my head the entire night, as if surviving childhood created lifelong debt, as if parenting was some investment expecting financial returns. That was the moment I knew I had to leave, not eventually. Now. So 3 days later, I signed the lease. Moving out was supposed to be the hardest part. Turns out I was wrong. The hardest part was discovering my father had stolen my identity years earlier. It happened during lunch break. I was sitting in my car eating fast food while checking emails when I saw a credit monitoring alert. New credit activity detected. At first I assumed it was spam. Then I opened it. My stomach dropped instantly. There was a line of credit under my name connected to an old address. Opened when I was 19. Current balance, almost $11,000. I remember staring at the screen feeling like reality had tilted sideways. I never opened that account. Ever. I called the bank immediately. After 20 minutes of verification and security questions, the representative casually said something that permanently changed my life. "The secondary authorized contact is Richard Dawson." My father. I literally stopped breathing for a second. Everything suddenly made horrible sense. Why Dad always discouraged me from checking my credit. Why financial conversations made him weirdly tense. Why he insisted family handles problems privately. I drove home in complete silence. Not anger, not sadness, shock. Because there's something uniquely devastating about realizing your own parent viewed your identity as a financial tool. I confronted him that night in the kitchen. Part of me still hoped there was some misunderstanding. There wasn't. He didn't even deny it. "That was for the family," he said flatly. I stared at him. "You opened debt in my name. We needed help. You committed fraud." His expression darkened instantly. "Watch your mouth." "No," I snapped. "You watch yours." My mother rushed in immediately. "What's happening?" I held up my phone. "He stole my identity." And somehow she looked annoyed at me. "Lucas, don't start drama." Drama, $11,000. Tyler wandered in halfway through the argument and immediately sided with Dad. "Bro, you're overreacting." I laughed, actually laughed, because the insanity finally became too big to process normally. "You people are unbelievable." My father stepped closer. "You think you're too good for this family now?" "No," I said quietly. "I think you've been using me." Then he said something I will never forget for the rest of my life. "Everything I did was because you owed us for raising you." That sentence destroyed whatever love I still had left for him, because suddenly everything became clear. In his mind, parenthood wasn't love, it was ownership, and I was property that stopped cooperating. That night I sat alone in my room shaking so badly I felt nauseous. Then something unexpected happened. For the first time in years, I stopped feeling guilty. And once guilt disappears, manipulation loses its power. The next morning I filed fraud reports, every single one. Identity theft affidavit, credit bureau disputes, bank investigations, everything. And I didn't warn my father first. Because after years of emotional abuse and financial exploitation, he didn't deserve another conversation. He deserved consequences. I moved out on a Tuesday morning while everyone was gone. No screaming, no dramatic goodbye, no emotional speech, just silence. Honestly, the quietness felt surreal. I packed slowly over 2 weeks so nobody noticed. Important documents first, then electronics, then clothes, then work equipment. By moving day, my bedroom barely looked lived in anymore. I remember standing there staring at the empty walls, thinking about how many years I wasted trying to earn love from people who only valued usefulness. And the worst part, I still almost stayed. That's what trauma does. Even when leaving is healthy, your brain treats freedom like betrayal. While loading the moving van, my phone buzzed. Mom texted, "Can you pick up groceries after work?" Not "How are you?" Not "Are we okay?" Just another task, another expectation. Another reminder that my value only existed through service. I stared at the message for a long moment before turning my phone off completely. Then I left. And for the first time in years, I could breathe. The apartment was tiny. 1 bedroom, cheap carpet, thin walls, but it was peaceful. Nobody yelling downstairs, nobody stealing from me, nobody monitoring my finances. I sat on the floor eating Chinese takeout that first night and almost cried from relief. Not happiness. Relief. People who grow up in healthy homes don't understand how revolutionary peace feels after chaos. The next part required strategy, because my family genuinely assumed I'd continue funding things after moving out. That illusion lasted about 48 hours. First, I canceled the Wi-Fi account, then the streaming services, then the shared subscriptions, then the utility auto payments tied to my bank account. Every password changed, every account locked. And then I waited. Tyler called first. "Yo, the internet's down." "Okay, what do you mean okay?" "I canceled it." Silence. "Why?" "Because I don't live there anymore." He sounded genuinely confused. "Dad said you'd still help." I laughed softly. "No." The explosion happened instantly. "You're screwing everyone over." Interesting how accountability feels like cruelty to people benefiting from you. My mother called next, then Ella. Then my father. I ignored every call until the voicemail arrived. "You selfish little bastard," my father snarled. "After everything we did for you." That sentence replayed in my head for hours. Because toxic parents always weaponize survival later. Food becomes debt. Shelter becomes leverage. Basic parenting becomes lifelong obligation. 3 days later, Tyler showed up at my apartment unannounced. I only opened the door halfway. "How'd you get this address?" "Mom found paperwork in your room." Of course she did. He looked around my apartment with visible disgust. "This is where you moved?" "Yes." "You seriously abandoned the family over food and bills?" I stared at him. "No, I left because none of you respect me." He rolled his eyes. "There you go acting like a victim again." That sentence perfectly summarized our family. The exploited person always becomes dramatic once they stop cooperating. Tyler crossed his arms. "So what now? You just cut everyone off forever?" "Yes." "You don't mean that?" I looked directly at him. "I do." And for the first time in his life, I watched Tyler realize he no longer had access to me. He left furious, but honestly, I barely felt anything anymore. Because once peace enters your life, chaos loses its grip. The thing nobody tells you about toxic families is this. Once the scapegoat leaves, the entire system starts collapsing. Because suddenly there's nobody absorbing the pressure anymore. That person had always been me. Within weeks, everything at my parents' house started unraveling. I only knew because Ella kept texting me updates. Dad's freaking out about bills. Tyler says you're selfish. Mom cried because Netflix stopped working. Imagine being emotionally devastated because your free streaming account disappeared. That's the level of dependency they built around me. But the real problem was money. Without my contributions, my father suddenly had to manage actual household expenses himself. And apparently he'd been drowning financially for years. Tyler called me late one night sounding nervous. Dad says banks keep calling. I stayed quiet. Then he lowered his voice. What exactly did you report? Fraud. Lucas, he stole my identity. He's still our father. And I'm still his son, didn't stop him. Silence. For the first time ever, Tyler didn't have a comeback. And honestly, that conversation haunted me afterward. Because part of me realized Tyler and Ella were victims too. Just different kinds. My father built the entire family around fear and dependency. Tyler became the golden child because obedience benefited him. Ella became helpless because helplessness earned protection. And me? I became the provider because responsibility made me useful. Toxic families assign roles. And they punish anyone who tries leaving theirs. A week later, my mother showed up at my apartment alone. I almost didn't open the door, but some stupid, hopeful part of me still wanted her to finally act like my mother. She walked inside carrying groceries like some peace offering. You look tired, she said immediately. Not I miss you. Not how are you? Just criticism disguised as concern. She spent 10 minutes subtly insulting my apartment. This neighborhood seems loud. You spent money on this couch? The kitchen's small. Then eventually she got to the real reason she came. Your father's under a lot of stress. There it was, not accountability, stress. He committed fraud. He was trying to keep the family afloat. With my identity, she sighed dramatically. Can't you just drop the investigation? And suddenly everything became crystal clear. She didn't come to reconcile. She came to protect him. I stared at her quietly. Did you know? She looked away. That answer hurt more than yelling ever could, because silence is still betrayal. I'm your mother, she whispered. You're supposed to help us. Something inside me shut off permanently at that moment. Not anger, attachment. I already did, I said softly, for years. Then I opened the door. She started crying immediately, real tears too. But here's the uncomfortable truth. People can cry and still be manipulative. Sometimes tears happen because consequences finally arrived. She left without another word. And when the door closed behind her, I realized something terrifying. I didn't miss them anymore. The fraud investigation lasted 4 months. 4 exhausting months of paperwork, phone calls, and anxiety. But eventually the evidence became undeniable. The debt was removed from my name. The account transferred back to my father. My credit slowly recovered after that. Emotionally, though, I don't think part of me ever fully recovered. Because betrayal changes the way you see people forever, especially family. The final confrontation happened outside a grocery store near my apartment. I almost didn't recognize my father at first. He looked older, smaller somehow. Like life had finally started pressing down on him too. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then he walked toward me. You happy now? No apology, of course not. I tightened my grip on the shopping basket. You stole from me. I raised you. That doesn't give you ownership over my life. His jaw clenched immediately. You think you're better than us now? No, I said quietly. I just think I deserved better. That sentence hit him harder than yelling ever could, because deep down I think he knew it was true. He looked away first. You broke this family apart? I almost laughed. Families don't collapse because one person leaves. They collapse because they were built on dysfunction from the beginning. I didn't break it, I said softly. I just stopped holding it together. Then I walked away. That was the last time I ever saw him. A month later, I changed my phone number, removed myself from every family group chat, updated emergency contacts at work, blocked everyone except Ella. Not because we were close, because part of me still hoped maybe one person would eventually understand. She never did. The last text she sent me read, I hope cutting us off was worth it. I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it, because the answer was yes. It was worth it. Not because revenge feels good, because peace does. Peace feels good, waking up without anxiety. Buying groceries knowing they'll still be there tomorrow. Living somewhere silence isn't punishment. People raised in healthy families don't understand how revolutionary those things feel. A year later, I adopted a rescue dog named Oliver. The shelter warned me he had trust issues. Funny enough, so did I. Sometimes late at night while Oliver slept beside me, I'd think about something my therapist once told me. Some people confuse access with love. That sentence changed my life, because my family thought loving me meant owning me, owning my money, my time, my emotional energy, but real love respects boundaries. Real love doesn't punish independence. Real love doesn't demand repayment for survival. These days, I rarely think about them anymore, not because the pain disappeared, because eventually peace becomes louder than the past. And honestly, that's enough for me now. Because after 27 years of being treated like the family ATM, I finally became my own person. And nobody will ever take that away from me again.